I know that most of you also come from countries where the threats are really much bigger than in France, and I'm sure many of you have experience in protesting, mobilizing, organizing. So it's with a lot of humility that I'm in front of you today, and I will try to share a little bit of my work and strategies with the presentation, with projects I have been working on. And then I'm very happy that we have a conversation for those of you who were able to read the resources I've been sharing. We're going to talk about the far right today. So I will start by introducing, and I see the presentation slightly coming in. That's going to be exciting. I'm going to start with introducing myself and where I come from. So I said I'm an activist, I'm a social entrepreneur, I'm a woman, I am a mother, and I am the granddaughter of a fascist. So my grandfather, the Colonel Langlade, played a very big role during the Second World War. He was in charge of a milice, a very secret milice for Maréchal Pétain. Maréchal Pétain was the one who was ruling France under the occupation. So my grandfather's job was to destroy the resistance, basically. I don't know how to change. Yeah, here we go. So you can imagine that I had a lot of therapy coming from a family like that. My grandmother, the daughter of my grandfather, she died in September. She was a big fascist as well. My whole family, let's say, from my mother, are all very big fascists. They used to work with Jean-Marie Le Pen, who was the head of the far right. Now, most of them, they do campaign for Jordan Bardella, for Éric Zemmour, who are like the new Nazi that we have in France. And my mother, when she turned 18, she knew something was not good with that. She had the feeling that all of this was wrong, and she decided to escape. And she became a brilliant leftist who smokes joints and is super radical feminist. And she had me. The thing is that my mother, even if she rebelled against her family, she thought, okay, I want my daughter to understand where she comes from and how we can fight against obscurantism, against the forces that see race superiority or misogyny as something good. So she decided to send me all my holidays, when I was a child, to my grandparents. So I would grow up with my super progressive family in south of France and spend all my holiday in Paris with my fascist grandparents. And my mother, she thought, okay, she needs to understand by her own. So when I turned 15 years old, with my school, we visited, I knew my grandmother. My grandfather died when I was younger, but my grandmother was saying horrible stuff all the time, like fascist stuff, racism, misogyny, homophobic, anti-Semitism, like you name it. But I thought, okay, she's an old lady. Who here never had a conversation with a member of the family that was very polarized? Like, this old uncle you have who says horrible stuff at Christmas table. That was my grandmother. I saw it like that. But, hi, welcome. So when I turned 15, I went with my school to visit a concentration camp. In France, we have one, unfortunately, called the Struthof. And when I came back from this school trip, I told my grandmother during my holiday, hey, Grandma, I visited this Nazi concentration camp. And at this moment, she told me, my little sweetie, this never existed. This story of camp was invented by the Americans, by Hollywood, because Hitler never killed any Jew. Like, they died because they were sick, because they were fighting each other, but this story has been invented. And then I realized that it was bigger than I thought, and I told my grandmother, okay, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I love you so much. I wrote a letter of 3 pages because she basically she was there since I was a baby, so I loved her. And I said, okay, I cannot talk to you anymore. I cannot love you anymore if you really are like, if you're fascist. And she said, I love you so much as well, but in our family, it's the ideas above the love. And I think this was the very beginning of my career as an activist against the far right. Because what I always wanted was to convince my grandmother that she was wrong. Because I loved her, and that was so powerful, this love. And I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and sometimes I didn't talk to her during years, and sometimes I would come back and talk to her. Even once I was your age, I was doing my master degree, and I had a class of sociology. And I was asked to complete a small thesis about a soldier and the army, and interview former army guys. So I called my grandmother, and I said, hey, do you have friends who used to serve in the army? She said, yeah, all my friends from the Pétain, from the collaboration. And I ended up interviewing those guys that were serving in the army under Maréchal Pétain in collaboration with Adolf Hitler. So I did study them. I mean, they didn't know what I was writing, obviously, because I was not writing good stuff about them, but I did study them. I wanted to understand what is behind this logic, this horrible logic, of racial domination, of masculinism domination, of anti-Semitism, and my whole life has been dedicated to this fight. So the who I am started when I was 15 years old, but then I thought, okay, if I want to dedicate my whole life against fascism, where should I start? So my very first job when I was 25 was to launch an organization called SINGA, that is an international NGO now. We started from scratch, we didn't have anything. With 2 friends, but we thought, okay, if we want to undermine fascism, we need to change the way people would perceive the other, the so-called other. And what is the most polarizing other in any country? The foreigner, the immigrant. So SINGA is an international organization that is dedicated to change the perception about refugees and newcomers. We don't say the word migrant, we say newcomers. So I started this organization, it was 2012, and we thought, okay, how do we change narrative? How do we change perception? If you talk about immigration, the only way you hear about immigration is either in the news, on TV, mostly with people saying, oh, they're coming, look at them, they're coming, they're poor. If you Google refugee right now on Google, the images that you will see would be mass of poor people struggling in the sea, in camps. If I ask you to think about the word refugee, what you will see would be boats and camps and horrible stuff. You will never see what people can actually do when they arrive in a country. You will never think about entrepreneurship, friendship, good stuff we can do together. So this is how we started SINGA. We thought, okay, we need to change that. We need to make people think, when they think about refugees and migration, about good stuff. So we did that with 3 programs, and I can come back to that later, but I don't want to spend too much time to do publicity, advertising for an organization. But basically, we started the first program that was incubators for entrepreneurs with a migrant background. We're like, okay, if someone in his country was a journalist, or if someone in his country was a doctor, and they cannot be a journalist or a doctor when they arrive in another country, because they get asylum and protection, because they don't speak the language, the diploma is not the same, it's very difficult. They always can start an organization on their own, and we just need to help them. So we started this entrepreneurship incubators, and we supported about 2,000 entrepreneurs with a migrant background in the past 10 years with a lot of job creations, which is good for when you have a president called Emmanuel Macron who likes money. No one, very few people are laughing to my jokes. I will try to be better. With SINGA, we also started a hosting platform. At the time, the fashion was with Airbnb, and we thought, okay, a lot of people are hosting newcomers, but we don't know about them, we don't know how to be connected to each other, so let's start a platform. And actually, it was in 2015 when the Syria crisis happened, and a lot of people were escaping Middle East. And when you were looking at watching the news, you would see a lot of people like millions of migrants are arriving in Europe. It wasn't like that. In the end, France welcomed 30,000 people. It wasn't millions. But we started this hosting platform, and actually we had a great success, and about 10,000 French people offered to host refugees in their house for like 3 months to 1 year. So you can imagine when you're a newcomer escaping your country, if you are hosted in the family of a French person, you will learn French so fast. You can learn the language so fast. In less than a year, actually, newcomers will speak the language, get a job, be happy, and have babies. Maybe not have babies, but fall in love. And we had a lot of SINGA babies. And also with SINGA, what we did was to create parties, good time, good stuff. Like, let's go out, let's get drunk together, let's play soccer, let's dance together. And now SINGA is a community of about 80,000 people, including only 10,000 people who are refugees. But the most important thing to me, remember my grandmother, was to change opinion of the locals. So when you meet someone, you change your mind. When you meet a newcomer, when you can talk all the time during Christmas with your uncle who is annoying, he will never change his mind. But if in front of him he has a person, let's say from Afghanistan, a woman from Afghanistan talking about her right, he would change his opinion. Meeting each other is the real way to create the compassion that is needed to change the mind of the people who are narrow-minded. So that was my first attempt. This is a picture of SINGA, actually, from a very cool party that we organized. Of course, I was also angry, so I was also an activist, a feminist activist, going in the street with my megaphone here and yelling at men. Yeah, but I won't talk about that much. So yeah, I tried, like, from the beginning, activism for me was a way to strategize, to expose my anger as well, to have a concrete impact. As a feminist activist, we were talking about street harassment, and because of that, because of me yelling in my megaphone all the time, we went on TV because we were saying, okay, touching the ass of a woman in the street should not be legal. It was legal at the time, and we managed to make a law pass to change that and make it illegal. So, guys, you cannot touch the ass of a woman anymore, and that's really good. And you're so young, I'm sure that you were not even aware that it was possible. So this first years of my life of activist was from 2012 to 2018. In 2018, I received an email from a guy that you may know. His name is Barack. He used to be the president of the United States. And Barack had a problem. He was the president of the United States during 8 years. He dedicated his whole life for a purpose. He has a vision. You can think that you hate Barack Obama or you love Barack Obama. I don't care. I agree that President Obama did a lot of horrible things, especially in terms of deportation and with lots of geopolitics. But he was the president. He was basically the master of the word, and his message was hope, compassion. Those are good values. And in one night, in 2016, in only one night, everything he fought for during his whole life just fell apart because a crazy asshole with blonde hair came here and said, okay, I'm going to destroy all of that. So Barack was a bit sad and a bit depressed. So he decided to move on and and he thought, okay, what can I do that would be more powerful than being the president of the United States? How can you be more powerful than that? So he decided to create a foundation called the Obama Foundation. And he started that in 2018. And the purpose of the Obama Foundation was to support, train, and connect a future generation of leaders. So to make baby Obamas, basically. He started with several programs, but one of the programs that was the most important was to select 12 activists across the planet, select them and make them come to New York, pay them shitload of money, brainwash them a little bit with CIA stuff, and support them in growing their impact, understanding better politics, how things work, and become future leaders, let's say. I don't know why, but I got an email and I did this thing, which was cool. I have to admit that it's super cool because I came there and then there was Barack Obama in front of me and he was like, "Hey, what's your name?" And I said, "Yes." Because when you have Obama in front of you, you're just like, yes. And then Michelle came and I was like, yes. It's super beautiful because it's a fellowship, only 12 people from the planet. I was the only European. I was 29 years old. I went there with my baby and my husband, and I spent 1 year, like they paid lots of money for us to be in New York and to be like super VIP and getting the trainings from people that were working in the Pentagon, CIA, ambassadors, people who had a big power on the planet. Until, I was enjoying that very much until I realized that the people that were mentoring me, the people I was talking to, the people I was shaking hands with, were responsible of the death of the families of my friends, because all my friends were refugees from Russia, from Colombia. I'm not saying the US is responsible for everything all the time, but when you are the biggest country in the world, you have a responsibility. And I actually had the opportunity to ask this question to one of our teachers. Her name is Samantha Power. She was ambassador to the UN for the US. And I said, what happened with Syria? You are responsible. Because what happened with Syria is that Bashar al-Assad was killing his own people. And France and the US were supposed to intervene and launch the army in Syria to prevent Bashar from killing his people. And at 4 a.m. in the morning that night, Barack Obama called President François Hollande and said, I'm not doing that. Because the Congress would refuse for me to do that, because I need to ask the Congress and I don't want to be like Bush. That's a big question, right? Like, should the US intervene or not in Syria? Would it have changed anything? And I asked this question to Samantha Power, because she's the one who took this decision. And she was crying when I asked this question, because she said, I still don't sleep at night. I don't know. Am I responsible? Are we responsible for doing or not doing? And that's the big question that is being asked when it comes to power, when it comes to activism, or when it comes to Spider-Man saying, like being told, with great power comes great responsibility. But that's actually true. So after this year, and because I am bragging a lot about this experience, I put a picture of President Obama tweeting about me. Voila. When I came back from this experience, I thought, okay, this is really good what I'm doing with SINGA. We're a big organization. I'm on TV. We support lots of people. We change things. We change law. But in the end of the day, Marine Le Pen is always coming second during a presidential election. In the end, fascism is still growing. So what's next for me? Because I could stay here and run my organization and continue to do the work that I'm doing, or I can have more impact, more immediate impact. Because what happened with my great-grandfather, I don't want that to happen ever again. So I started to study the far right. I started to study how things work. And plus, I had my personal experience because I used to be very cyber harassed and threatened to death in the media, in social media. Till the day I woke up and I received a message on Facebook, and I see that there is a group where they threaten me, like it's like thousands and thousands of death threats because of an interview I did in the media. I'm telling that to you because then I sued them. We had a trial against my harasser, and I won the trial. Yeah. The problem is not that I won the trial against those that were telling me that they would kill me. The problem is that I lost the trial against the newspaper that published the article that led to all the threat. And that leads me to where I stop talking about myself and I try to be more, voilà, a little bit more global. I'm sure you're aware of what's going on in the world, because now we have Trump with Trump 2.0, right? First it was bad, now it's really bad. I'm sure you're very familiar with the geopolitical dynamic or the big threat posed by artificial intelligence or the tech. Are you familiar with the Overton window? Yeah, very much. Okay, cool. No, some people are not. Yeah, okay. So you know, the Overton window is when something that was too radical enters the public debate and becomes very normal. In France, but I'm sure in many countries, we have the term grand remplacement, the big replacement. 40 years ago, it was impossible to talk about that. It was like even the fascists were not, didn't want to talk about that, because it was a crazy concept saying that immigrants would replace locals. But slowly and slowly, because it was put everywhere in the media, this term was used by many politicians. It was really thought of making it enter in the public debate. It became now something normal to talk about the great replacement. And not only the far right is talking about it, even the center right is actually talking about it as a threat. And even yesterday, Mélenchon, the far left, talked about it. The Overton window is really this effect of changing the narrative to push the reality to a sense or to another. I consider myself a progressive, and obviously abortion was outside the Overton window during so many years. Or the fact that me, as a woman, I am able to work and think and have a bank account. That until like 60 years ago, it was illegal. It was outside the Overton window. And I'm sure that I saw the diversity of countries you come from. You have many examples of things that used to be radical, that are less radical, from two sides. So I consider this thing of the Overton window as a war. Like we need to push to make sure that what we are doing is advancing towards progress. But it's like everything, we have big backlashes. You do 3 steps en avant and then 2 en arrière. Well, sorry, I didn't remember how you say that. You have, I shared with you already some documentation about the Atlas Network, the Heritage Foundation, Steve Bannon. Some of you may have read this book, Les Ingénieurs du Chaos, The Engineers of Chaos, from Giuliano da Empoli. It's a great book, it's the Bible. It describes how the illiberals, let's say, like what we call the far right, we can also call it illiberalism, we can also call them fascists. They have been using lots of tools to make sure they would win. The problem is that us, progressive, we didn't think about strategizing. We didn't use the same tools. What they are doing now, and it comes mostly from the US, but not only, the Russians are actually good too. They created a big galaxy to make sure that they take power. And they've been working for the past 30 years altogether. So this is, I mean, it's unreadable, this thing. It's the galaxy of the far right in France, because I've been documenting for the past 3 years what the billionaires from the far right are funding. If you want to understand a system, you need to search to look for the money, always. And actually in France, we're lucky. We have 2 billionaires who are funding far right. And I've been investigating on them because one of them is called Pierre-Edouard Sterrin. No one knew about him. He was known as a rich guy who is giving lots of money to tech. And thanks to the work of many journalists, and we were able to compile everywhere he was putting in his money. And we would discover that he's putting his money in a massive galaxy. So I wrote that, like, they work together. When I say they work together, I mean far-right politicians across the planet work together. They do the same training. They know how to talk the same. They know how to put their hair the same. If you look at Jordan Bardella in France, he would have the same hair that the far-right in Sweden or in Holland or in Belgium. They all look the same. They're all friends. Their trainer is actually, one of their trainers is Viktor Orban. They have schools. Oh, I forgot to mention, I created a political school, because I was looking for the solution, and one of the solution is to have schools. You need political school, and this is what they are doing, because they said, okay, political schools that are public or universities are saying leftist stuff to the people, so we need to create an alternative narrative. So they created lots of schools. In France, there are 4 schools who have trained 6,000 people in the past 5 years. And I'm talking about not students that are all at 20 years old. I'm talking about politicians. I'm talking about people who are now in the parliament for the far right, people who are in the European Parliament, people who are mayors, people who are working with those politicians. I'm talking about journalists as well. It's a massive wave. Imagine 6,000 people in the past 5 years trained by the far right to create an army of politicians and public and opinion leaders. They have influencers. In other countries, the far right is working with influencers. I'm sure you know many of them. In France, we have, for instance, this little girl, this woman, let's say. She's saying, for instance, horrible stuff on her Instagram, but she has like millions of followers. She's saying that the more you have sex, the less fertile you get. So it's better to have sex with a woman who never had sex with anyone, because you will have beautiful babies. She's also saying that the woman is naturally created to reproduce with a man that would be richer, more powerful, because a woman instinctively is looking for better reproduction. So she's like, I suggest you to follow her. She's really crazy. It's good inspiration. So they have influencers, they have non-profits, that's very new. They fund non-profits organization, let's say non-profits that would support women who are single mom. Why? Because they would dissuade the woman from practicing abortion. That's a very big strategy for them. They have philanthropy, I mentioned those rich guys, they have foundation, it's more and more in the philanthropy now. They have think tanks, obviously, and that's very old, from the late 50s. There have been a lot of liberal think tanks, all funded and coordinated by a network called the Atlas Network. I think I shared with you those documents. They have so-called feminists, yes, there are a lot of influencers from the far right who call themselves feminists because they would prioritize feminism over racism. For instance, there is a woman in France called Claire Géronimi. She's very much on the media because she's been raped by a man who didn't have any document in France. So she's advocating against rape, but only by foreigners. So no immigrants, men, but white men are okay. They have so-called activists, whistleblower, lawyers, that they're very, very organized. I don't know how much time I have left. Okay, 10 minutes. Woo. I could talk about the far right during many, many hours. Not this, no. So we have hope because maybe they have millions, but we are millions. And that's good. Maybe some of you, okay, I'm not going to talk about Mamdani. I'm sure you all know who he is, because 6 months ago no one knew him, and now he's like the god of many people, and mine. No, one good initiative is Nika Kovac. She's Slovenian. Have you heard of her? Good. Any one of you signed the My Voice, My Choice petition for safe abortion? Bravo, madame. Wow. Yeah, good. She did that. Nika is a wonderful activist from Slovenia, and back then, 10 years ago, in Slovenia, there was the far right in power with horrible laws. For instance, encouraging concentration of media under the property of rich people. So she was pissed, and she organized a referendum against that. And she went to the street, and she managed to get petition, and with the petition, she managed to get a referendum. And thanks to that, the law changed in our country. She organized 17 referendum in Slovenia. Yeah, she doesn't sleep at night. Until, she was able to kick out the guy, the far-right guy. And now the left is in Slovenia, is ruling Slovenia. And she managed to make the far-right even almost illegal. So she's really badass. But that wasn't enough for her. So in Europe, you have the system of if you get 1 million signature on a petition, you can ask the parliament and the commission to create a law about the cause you signed for. So the My Voice, My Choice project that she initiated was to allow safe abortion for free, safe, in all European Union. It's kind of like what we did in France. Now abortion is in the constitution, it's protected by the constitution. She wanted that for the whole European Union. She did it. She had 1.2 million signature using Instagram, social media. If you follow My Voice, My Choice, you will see they're amazing. They put unicorns everywhere and say, safe abortion. It worked. Because now it's been approved by the parliament, it's been approved yesterday by the commission, and it's going to happen, and women will have access to safe and free abortion in the whole European Union. And I think that's pretty badass. I don't have time to talk to you about the mafia, but maybe one word about the mafia. It's because violence is not only from the far right. It's like criminality is everywhere, but the far right and the mafia often work together. I had the chance to visit south of Italy and become an anti-mafia ambassador. So maybe some of you know this guy. His name is Mimo. I know there is one Italian in the room. Yeah? O conosci questo? Mimo Lucano. È il sindaco di Riace, he's the mayor of Riace. So basically in south of Italy there are many mafia. The biggest is in Calabria, it's called the 'Ndrangheta. And the 'Ndrangheta has monopoly on the cocaine from all across the planet, so they're very rich. And you go to Calabria and south of Italy, and mafia is everywhere all the time. So if you buy a tomato, it's from the mafia, because they control the farmers. I'm sorry for the Italian in the room if I'm very, very not descriptive enough. I know it's a very complex system. But what happened is that the anti-mafia people decided to unite and work together on small steps, small baby steps, to make sure the mafia would not annoy them and not control anymore what they're doing. So some agricultors joined forces, worked together, because the tomato from the mafia would say, okay, you sell the tomato 10 cents. And they would say, no, we want to sell it 50 cents. So they got together in a cooperative. The mafia, what they did, they were pissed about that because they wouldn't take money anymore. So they were so pissed that they bombed them. They put bombs and they killed most of them. The day after, the farmers decided to organize a party and make a big party to make sure that the mafia would hear them and say, we will resist. No matter how many times you bomb us, we will resist. So the mafia bombed them again. And they did another party. And the second party, there was way more people than during the first party. And they bombed them again. And there was another party. Until 3 years later, the mafia said, okay, you pissed us off, fuck off. And the anti-mafia people won. And this is how, step by step, with very grassroots community organizing, you can actually change things and change an entire system. And Mimo Lucano is the mayor of a small town called Riace, and he decided to, because there was unemployment, no young people, they were all going to the north, they were all leaving the village. So he said, okay, I will welcome a lot of refugees. And he created this whole village now full of refugees with who are working in farms, working in art. There's a lot of Airbnb and tourists who are, not Airbnb, but a lot of tourism who are coming to visit the village. And it recreated a big economic dynamic. And this guy is no member of the European Parliament. He's an amazing person. If you want to read more further resources, I recommend you to read the story of Riace in Italy. So with all the, and then we can talk a little bit more and have a more exchange. What I have learned along the way, because I forgot to describe what I'm doing now, but you would have understand that now I think with strategies. How can we act against the fascists? They have schools, we need schools. So I launched a school. And I support and train future political leaders coming from diverse background, underrepresented background. In our school, we support people, mostly women, um, um, people coming from poor background, black people, Arabic people, people with disability. In a nutshell, we support everyone except white men who studied a lot. Sorry, men. Because those people are not represented in politics and in power and are really good. We need to be political. We need to be very political. I'm so tired of listening to non-profits who say, oh, no, 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 I don't do politics. No, no, it's now or never that we need to do politics in everything we do all the time. I'm not saying we need to polarize, we need to fight against each other. I'm saying we need to make sure that we are being political, because the way we eat, the way we go out, the way we frequent people, the way we talk to people, everything is very political. And again, I really think that the battle is so big. We need money, obviously, so if you know any rich person, one part of my job is also to create foundations and collect money. I created one last year called La Concorde, and now we have 4 million euros to make sure that we defend institutions and non-profits that are defending democracy. Money is a very critical issue, so if there is one thing I can share with you, is that don't be scared in the future to talk about money, to ask for money when it's for a cause. In activism, people are so ashamed to talk about money. They're like, oh, okay, no, but you know, I work for free and we don't need that. No, 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 we don't work for free. We shouldn't work for free. Why? Pierre-Edouard Sterrin, Peter Thiel, or Elon Musk, like, take so much money to destroy the planet, and people who are trying to save it are working for free. No, that shouldn't be normal. And that creates a lot of mental health issues then. We need to be collective, we need to secure alliance, we need to work with politicians, we need to work with companies that are not too bad. And even if you work with companies or people you would think they're bad, they'll still be useful to you, because we need to be strategic about how to use resources. And we need to protect each other. Protecting activists is really, really, really important. And protecting each other, obviously. Voila, I think this is good, and this is me suffering from my imposter syndrome talking to you. And this is you. So now it's up to you guys.